to destabilize the democratic processes. As chairman of the committee, I've worked to restore Americans' faith in our elections, but foreign adversaries still have loopholes they can exploit to influence American elections. Today, we'll explore two key things. There's current laws on the books that prohibit foreign interference. We'll explore how these laws are working in practice and how they're enforced. There's also loopholes that exist under current law that still allow foreign actors to influence U.S. elections. Let's dive into how that's possible. Federal law generally prohibits non-citizens or foreign businesses from directly giving to candidates' campaigns, super PACs, or running ads in support for or against candidates. However, it's currently legal for foreign nationals to indirectly funnel money through 501c organizations. These organizations can then channel that money to super PACs or another 501c to directly help a candidate or influence a policy. As chairman of the Committee on House Administration, I introduced and the committee passed the Preventing Foreign Interference in American Elections Act that closes this specific loophole. It's important that we continue to evaluate the current legal system and focus on strengthening and enforcement of our laws to prevent foreign interference in American elections. On the other hand, we have also had to address the illegal methods utilized by foreign adversaries to funnel illicit money into U.S. campaigns. For example, it's currently illegal for someone to donate to a political campaign in the name of another person. Yet there's concerns foreign adversaries are utilizing identities of unwitting U.S. citizens in order to donate to U.S. campaigns. We've shown that there are vulnerabilities in our campaign finance system that will allow a foreign actor to use a U.S. citizen as a straw donor in order to contribute. This method would be very challenging to detect, but may involve the use of gift cards in the name of an unwitting straw donor to avoid detection when facilitating such transactions. Bad actors may also illegally exploit multiple unwitting identities to break large donations into smaller amounts, allowing them to circumvent individual contribution limits. These efforts effectively disguise illegal donations and allow foreign actors to violate campaign finance laws that are currently in place. In the last year, the Committee on House Administration has been reviewing online donation platform policies that have vulnerabilities that may allow foreign interference to occur. I uncovered recently major Democratic fundraising platform ActBlue did not automatically reject the use of prepaid gift cards or require users input the card verification value, the CVV, that's a 3 or 4 digit code on the back of your credit card, that could have been creating a loophole that foreign bad actors could have exploited. In August of this year, I wrote a letter to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, requesting information on its work to combat illicit election funding efforts, particularly from foreign actors. To this day, the committee has not yet received a response to our questions or a briefing from FinCEN. This is unacceptable. In October, I requested information from the Treasury Department on potential election interference through fraudulent donations and asked to review any suspicious activity reports related to ActBlue. The Treasury Department has yet to allow this committee or the Committee on Oversight, chaired by James Comer, to review those SARs. Following my investigation into the methods used by foreign adversaries to funnel money into U.S. elections, I introduced the SHIELD Act, which will prohibit political committees from accepting contributions without the disclosure of the CVV or from gift cards. I'm pleased to say that this bill passed the House and now awaits Senate passage. Unfortunately, foreign interference in U.S. elections is not confined to the campaign finance space. We've also seen foreign actors try to influence our elections through disinformation campaigns and cyber attacks. Foreign-backed disinformation campaigns take advantage of First Amendment protections and spread false and misleading narratives to undermine trust, polarize voters, and sway public opinion. This is a serious vulnerability. Cyber attacks can illegally target election infrastructure, including voter registration databases or email systems of political campaigns, in an attempt to disrupt processes or steal sensitive information. We saw an example of this during the most recent presidential election when President-elect Trump's campaign was allegedly hacked by Iranian nationals. We must ensure that America's election system is secure and fair. Democrats and Republicans agree that elections should be free from foreign interference. This should not be a partisan issue. It's imperative that we continue working to prevent foreign interference and it starts with closing the loopholes that exist under current federal law. Throughout this Congress, this committee has worked to improve Americans' confidence in our election system. Again today, we'll focus on laws that are currently on the books to prevent foreign interference, as well as explore current loopholes that exist. There's more work to be done. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us today. I look forward to a robust conversation on these critical issues. I'll now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes for the purpose of providing an opening statement.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Stile. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here, particularly so close to the holidays. We greatly appreciate your participation. At the outset, let me say, House Democrats care deeply about the integrity of our elections. That will always be our North Star. And foreign interference in our elections strikes at the very heart of democratic self-government. When we find opportunities to deter foreign interference and protect the integrity of our elections, House Democrats have worked and will continue to work to find bipartisan solutions. And as the chair referenced earlier this week, I was proud to support him in passage of H.R. 9488, the SHIELD Act, which will provide additional privacy and security protections for Americans who donate to political campaigns online. And the final bill was a product of extensive bipartisan negotiations and reflects, I think, critical revisions that have been secured by committee Democrats as we work through the process. So again, grateful to him and to the staff for that work. Regrettably, however, today's hearing is not truly about only protecting and promoting election integrity, but an effort at additional partisan posturing. And as the majority appears fixated on Act Blue, the prominent fundraising platform, and the majority has made in the past some specious claims unaccompanied by facts, all smoke, in many respects, no fire. So if we truly care about deterring election interference, we would look in everyone's backyard. We would look in, the Republicans would look in their own backyard. And I'll apologize if I missed this, but I have not seen an oversight letter or subpoena to WinRed, the prominent conservative fundraising platform, which was created in response to the tremendous success of Act Blue. According to CNN, WinRed had nearly 7 times more Federal Trade Commission complaints than Act Blue from January 22 through June of 2024. One 82-year-old woman who wore pajamas with holes in them because she didn't want to spend money on new ones didn't realize she had given Republicans more than $350,000 while living in a 1,000-square-foot Baltimore condo since 2020. But committee Republicans haven't said anything about that or the blatant scheme to swindle older Americans. Focusing on Act Blue is about politics, pure and simple. There are things to get to here, we agree, but not picking one side and ignoring entirely the actions of the other side. Now, my colleagues are also focused on foreign funding of ballot initiatives, and to their credit, this is a very pressing issue. Some of the testimony before this committee seeks to blame the problem squarely on the shoulders of a single donor, but in my neighborhood, we'd call that something else, but here I'll just refer to that approach as malarkey. We all agree ballot initiatives are a basic expression of our uniquely American expression of self-government and experience with self-government. Without a doubt, ballot initiatives should be protected from foreign intervention. We agree. Federal campaign finance law bars foreign nationals from contributing or donating money in connection with a federal, state, or local election. In 2015, I note, however, 3 Republican commissioners on the FEC voted to dismiss an enforcement action brought against foreign corporate special interests who spent $327,000 to oppose a California public health ballot measure. In doing so, those Republican commissioners opened a loophole foreign special interests have exploited. For example, in Maine, a Canadian-owned utility funneled over $20 million opposing a Maine citizen ballot initiative in 2020, dwarfing all other spenders on that campaign. Similar outside foreign special interest spending defeated a local Oregon ballot measure opposing the development of a natural gas pipeline in 2017. And as we'll hear more today, foreign corporate money defeated a 2018 water quality ballot initiative in Montana. You'll hear from a native Montanan about the harms foreign corporate spending poses in ballot initiatives. A disquieting story of a foreign company that donated $288,000 to oppose the ballot initiative, which had, if passed, quote, would increase Montana's ability to avoid polluting the state's waters, end quote, to put profits over people. As one Democratic federal election commissioner put it, a company based halfway around the world made a sizable donation, interjecting itself in hopes of future profits into a political debate in Montana over mining and the quality of Montana's waters. The story has a lamentable but unsurprising ending. The FEC dismissed the matter, allowing the foreign corporation's spending to influence a local Montana election to go unpunished. This outcome has real-world consequences. Montana's water is now more likely to be less clean, harming public health, the environment, agriculture, ranching, the outdoor recreation industry, and everyday quality of life in Montana. Unfortunately, 3 Republican FEC commissioners opened a loophole for foreign corporations to exploit. We need to close this loophole. We agree. And we can't stop there. Since the Supreme Court's disastrous Citizens United decision, our campaign finance system, to put it lightly, has been broken. And it's going to continue to be broken until we make a fix. And it is broken in a significant way. This year, one single donor, billionaire Elon Musk, spent at least $277 million of his own money backing Donald Trump and other Republican candidates. Also this year, just coincidentally, Musk's net worth climbed by more than $200 billion, with the vast bulk of the increase, $170 billion, coming just since Election Day. According to Open Secrets, 5 donors gave over $100 million during the 2024 election. We need to fix this broken special interest, big money campaign finance system, and the vast majority of Americans support that and understand that getting money, big money out of politics is important for them to have their influence over their government. We need to stem all avenues of potential foreign interference. We need meaningful disclosure of campaign funds and a functioning FEC. That's why Democrats will continue to support the Freedom to Vote Act. If we're serious about preventing foreign interference, please, let's do this in a bipartisan manner. I welcome it, and I would urge us to do it together. Sadly, given some of the work as it relates to elections here, I suspect that won't happen. But before yielding back, I want to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the CNN article titled, "How Elderly Dementia Patients Are Unwittingly Fueling Political Campaigns," which includes an observation that, quote, elderly, vulnerable consumers have unwittingly given away 6-figure sums to political campaigns, most often to Republicans. I also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a Washington Post article entitled, "Elon Musk Put $277 million into the Election. He's $200 billion richer this year." And with that, I yield back my time.
Without objection, the gentleman yields back. Without objection, all other members' opening statements will be made part of the hearing record if they're submitted to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Today we have a one-witness panel. We welcome Mr. Matthew O'Neill, Ms. Caitlin Sutherland, Mr. Bradley Bowman, and Mr. Durf Johnson. Our first witness, Matthew O'Neill, is a former managing director of the Secret Service Global Cyber Investigative Operations, a position which he directed and participated in worldwide cyber investigations. Our next witness, Ms. Caitlin Sutherland, is the executive director for Americans for Public Trust. Americans for Public Trust has been at the forefront of reporting on foreign influence in U.S. elections. Our next witness, Mr. Bradley Bowman, is a senior director for the Center of Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Mr. Bowman has expertise on the broad spectrum of actions undertaken by foreign state actors to influence American elections. Our last witness, Durf Johnson, is the Deputy Director for the Montana Environmental Information Center. We appreciate all of you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Pursuant to paragraph B of Committee Rule 6, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. Let me remind the witnesses that we've read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Under Committee Rule 9, you're to limit your oral presentation to a brief summary of your written statement. I'll now begin and recognize Mr. Matthew O'Neill for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Morelli, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the urgent threat.
Would you just hold the microphone a little
I'm
bit
sorry.
closer, since I want to make sure people online are able to hear you as well. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss the urgent threat of financial interference in U.S. elections through financial crimes. Addressing this issue is not just about protecting our democracy, it is a national security imperative. Foreign actors exploit gaps in our financial systems to fund operations designed to disrupt U.S. elections. These efforts often overlap with broader financial crime schemes like money laundering and fraud, which cost the U.S. economy billions every year. In 2023 alone, Americans lost over $12.5 billion to financial crimes. It's on? Okay.
Apologies, the speaker in the room is what's low. We're going to turn it up, so
Okay.
apologize.
I'll speak louder.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. The world once looked to the U.S. as a leader in combating financial crime, but today other countries are advancing faster, implementing modernized frameworks and technologies, while the U.S. struggles with outdated systems and insufficient collaboration. Without action, we risk falling further behind. Foreign actors exploit weaknesses in U.S. systems to fund election interference and other malign activities by leveraging shell companies, emerging platforms and digital ecosystems such as crowdfunding sites and unregulated fintech platforms with minimal AML or KYC requirements. Money mule networks. These networks launder money through witting and unwitting individuals, complicating traceability. Our key challenges include outdated systems. Tools like Section 314A of the USA Patriot Act rely on slow batch processing, delaying law enforcement's ability to act. SARs often lack key metadata, such as IP addresses, that are critical to tracking cyber-enabled financial crimes. There are regulatory gaps, such as platforms like crowdfunding sites and payment processors operate in a gray area with little or no oversight. Cryptocurrencies, while valuable for innovation, are being exploited to bypass traditional financial controls. There are limited incentives for financial institutions such as 314B, which allows voluntary information sharing. Participation is inconsistent because institutions lack tangible incentives to collaborate. To address these challenges, I recommend the following actions. 1, modernize Section 314A and 314B. Fund FinCEN to implement real-time automated query systems under 314A to enhance responsiveness. Expand 314A and 314B to include crowdfunding platforms, payment processors, and fintech companies, applying these updates across the Bank Secrecy Act. Incentivize financial institutions to engage in 314B information sharing through tax breaks or grants. Close regulatory gaps, extend AML and KYC requirements to include cryptocurrency exchanges, crowdfunding platforms, and payment processors. Mandate unique transaction identifiers to improve traceability across all payment systems. Enhance reporting standards. Require SARs to include metadata such as IP addresses and geolocation data for better traceability. Develop feedback mechanisms to show financial institutions how their reports contribute to investigations, encouraging more meaningful filings. Leverage advanced technology. Equip law enforcement with AI and blockchain analytics to identify patterns of illicit behavior. Support privacy-preserving technologies like fully homomorphic encryption to secure data sharing without compromising privacy. Last, and probably most important, encourage private-to-private collaboration. Expand safe harbor protections similar to 314B of the USA Patriot Act to include social media platforms, ISPs, telecommunications providers, domain registers, and other technology companies. This would allow entities to lawfully share information with each other without about suspicious activity, potential threats, and malicious actors, fostering collaboration across industries while mitigating liability concerns. Such a framework would significantly enhance the identification and disruption of election interference and other illicit activities. Addressing election interference through financial crime isn't just about closing gaps. It's about reestablishing U.S. leadership in the global stage. The tools we need already exist, but modernization incentives are necessary to fully realize their potential. By expanding information sharing frameworks, closing regulatory gaps, and leveraging technology, we can protect our democracy and restore public trust in our financial systems. Thank you for your time and attention. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Neill. Ms. Caitlin Sutherland, you're recognized for 5 minutes. And before you begin, the speaker in the room is the challenge for us. We're used to having it incredibly loud. The microphones are working, and those watching online are able to hear.
Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Morelli, and members of the committee. My name is Caitlin Sutherland. I'm the founding executive director of Americans for Public Trust, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to restoring trust in government by holding politicians and political groups accountable. Since our inception, APT has devoted extensive resources to uncovering and publicizing outside money and influence in politics and policy, including tracing foreign dark money. I thank you for the invitation and opportunity to again join you to discuss the important topic of foreign interference in U.S. elections. The majority of Americans agree that foreign nationals should be prohibited from influencing our elections. In fact, that has been federal law for 40 years. But unfortunately, federal law is inadequate when defining what foreign nationals can and cannot do. Essentially, foreign nationals are only prohibited from contributing to a candidate, committee, or super PAC, or participating in a campaign's decision-making process. This means foreign nationals can largely still influence a whole host of other election-related vehicles with zero repercussions. It is currently legal for foreign nationals to pay for get-out-the-vote operations, voter registration, issue advocacy, voter education, ballot harvesting, door knocking, like how the UK's Labour Party actively recruited British nationals to knock on doors to support Kamala Harris, and state and local ballot issue campaigns. Congress should act to close all these foreign influence loopholes. The issue of foreign nationals influencing our elections is not a hypothetical one, but a real and ongoing threat made easier when organizations like Act Blue have failed to put basic protections in place. As I've testified before, a significant source of foreign cash is flowing into our politics from Swiss billionaire Hans-Jörg Wyss, who is not a US citizen, but whose goal is to, quote, reinterpret the American Constitution in the light of progressive politics, end quote. According to the New York Times, Mr. Wyss's, quote, political activism is channeled through a daisy chain of opaque organizations that mask the ultimate recipients of his money, end quote. But through a detailed accounting of publicly available records, APT has been able to trace that at least $250 million of this foreign money has been funneled through the Arabella Advisors managed 1630 Fund. 1630 Fund, the quote, indisputable heavyweight of Democratic dark money, end quote, according to The Atlantic, receives this foreign money and then turns around and bankrolls political battles all across the country. How much? Well, in the absence of laws restricting foreign nationals from contributing to ballot issue campaigns, 1630 Fund has poured $130 million into ballot issue campaigns in 25 states. Ballot issues, while an important democratic tool, are also used to drive voter turnout to influence candidate races and often push the most extreme version of policies that would not withstand the legislative process. During the 2024 election cycle, 1630 Fund spent over $37 million in foreign-backed cash targeting ballot issues in Alaska, Arizona, Florida, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, and Ohio. 1630 Fund also heavily invests in super PACs, with their total giving approaching $90 million over the last 4 cycles. During this year's elections, their millions went towards financing competitive U.S. House races in Nebraska, Iowa, Montana, and Wisconsin, supporting a so-called independent U.S. Senate candidate in Nebraska, as well as propping up a libertarian presidential candidate to act as a spoiler to Donald Trump. Mr. Wyss's foreign money has also been allocated to groups like Indivisible, known for disrupting congressional town halls, to Eric Holder's National Redistricting Action Fund, which works to skew congressional maps to favor Democrats, to Climate Power, which ran television ads backing Biden's Build Back Better agenda and is now seeking to torpedo the nomination of Governor Doug Burgum for Interior Secretary, and even to fake news outlets like States Newsrooms, which operates under local-sounding papers in your state like Wisconsin Examiner, Florida Phoenix, Oklahoma Voice, and Ohio Capital Journal. Any vehicle that broadly influences the electoral process, from door knocking to ballot issues, should not be paid for by foreign dollars. These are simple, common sense loopholes to close, and I think we can all agree foreign billionaires, the UK's Labour Party, and CCP officials should stay out of our politics. I look forward to discussing ways to prevent foreign influence in our elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sutherland. Mr. Bowman, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Morelli, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today regarding efforts by foreign adversaries to undermine American democracy and the confidence we have in our elections. I applaud the committee's focus on this important issue, and I welcome the opportunity to hopefully provide some useful context. China, Russia, and Iran are waging an information war against the United States that includes a focus on the U.S. electoral process. Yet many Americans do not realize we are under attack. This lack of awareness is ideal for Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran. After all, predators like nothing better than hunting slumbering prey. In June, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies published a major report entitled Cognitive Combat: China, Russia, and Iran's Information War Against Americans. Much of my testimony is based on research conducted for that report, as well as the analysis of FDD's Center on Cyber and Technology Innovation, including the excellent work of Max Lesser, a senior analyst on emerging threats, who co-authored our written statement for today's hearing. I define information warfare as the messages and means to convey those messages that nation states use to advance political, economic, and security objectives and to strengthen the government's foundations of power, reinforce those of allies and partners, and undermine those of adversaries. By that definition, based on our research, Americans in our elections are already under attack by China, Russia, and Iran. Our authoritarian adversaries seek to divide Americans, pitting us against one another so that we are as domestically dysfunctional as possible. Our adversaries hope we consume our finite time, energy, and resources fighting one another rather than working together to strengthen our country at home and defend our interests abroad. They also seek to degrade our democracy's reputation. They want our model of representative democracy to look less appealing compared to their authoritarianism and autocracy. And our adversaries also seek to deceive Americans into believing falsely that we have no important interests or values to defend in places such as Taiwan, Ukraine, and Israel. Authoritarian regimes hope to deprive our partners of American diplomatic, economic, and military support, thereby making those partners more vulnerable to aggression. So why do our adversaries focus so much on our elections? Karl von Clausewitz, the 19th century Prussian military theorist, promulgated the concept of a center of gravity. He defined it as, quote, the hub of all power and movement on which everything depends. Clausewitz's center of gravity is sometimes characterized by analysts as the source of power and strength, the point against which all effort should be directed or protected. The American center of gravity is our Constitution and the rule of law, as well as free, fair, and trusted elections and the peaceful transfer of power. That is the foundation for who we are as Americans, and it is a major reason why we enjoy such extraordinary freedom and stability. Our adversaries understand that, and that's why they target our elections. During this election style, Russia sought to undermine Vice President Harris's campaign, and Iran attacked President-elect Donald Trump's campaign. China, for its part, attacked both candidates, in addition to some congressional candidates who are critical of China. In short, both parties were attacked, and all three adversaries sought to undermine the faith of Americans in our electoral process. It is difficult to define with precision the effects of these adversary efforts, but initial research by my colleague Max Lesser suggests that America proved remarkably resilient. In many instances, efforts of federal and state governments, the private sector, and the research community appear to have thwarted Russian, Iranian, and Chinese efforts to shape voters' preferences and undermine Americans' faith in the fairness and integrity of the democratic process. A Reuters Ipsos poll released several days after the election found that the majority of Americans believed the election was legitimate and accurate. That's the good news, but we should not become complacent. We should expect China, Russia, and Iran to continue to attack our electoral process with increasing ferocity and AI-empowered effectiveness. So what's to be done? In addition to strengthening our electoral defenses at home, the United States should go on the information warfare offensive against China, Russia, and Iran to begin to shift their cost-benefit analysis as they contemplate future attacks on our democracy. Such a campaign could systematically expose each regime's corruption, lies, and oppression, and help the Chinese, Russian, and Iranian people advocate for their own rights, including more representative governance. Such a campaign would seek to ensure that respective populations know the truth regarding each regime's foreign and domestic policies. If Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran don't like having to fend off offensive information warfare operations in their respective countries, perhaps they should stop attacking us. There are more details in our written statement. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowman. Mr. Johnson, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Style, Ranking Member Morelli, and members of the Committee on House Administration. My name is Durf Johnson, Deputy Director of the Montana Environmental Information Center. Thank you for the opportunity to offer my experience with foreign interference in U.S. elections today. I share your goal in assuring that Americans hold confidence in our electoral system. My comments will focus on the interference of an Australian corporation in a Montana ballot initiative. As a native Montanan, I hold a common sentiment of caring for and valuing the land we call home. Montana is the site of America's first national park and a robust flora and fauna that existed at the time of the Lewis and Clark expedition. It is the setting of a river runs through it, which aptly summarized many Montanan sympathies of no clear line between religion and fly fishing. Since territorial days, Montana has suffered from exploitation and corruption, owing in large part to a mineral wealth and high interest in corporate profiteering. This turn-of-the-century stranglehold is often referred to in Montana as the copper collar, referencing the enormous control of Butte's copper barons and their exertion of political power over our media, our business, and our politics. Even today, Montana is vulnerable to unwarranted corporate and political influence. Our small population, our cheap media market, and interest from corporations in our natural resources can often lead to our local interests being trammeled. Over the centuries, Montana has also had an unfortunate relationship with hard rock mining. From the Berkeley Pit, the U.S.'s largest Superfund site, to the more recent developments such as Montana Tunnels, a defunct mine just south of my home, which is now insufficiently bonded at $20 million in bankruptcy and responsible for destroying a trout stream. Pockmarks of defunct mining projects across the strait demonstrate these failures and continue to represent an ongoing liability for our residents and sovereign tribal nations. Due to our history, many Montanans are rightfully skeptical of mining proposals. Mining must contend with certain safeguards in Montana, including an environmental rights provision written into our Constitution. Montana also has a ballot initiative process that we've used in the past for regulating hard rock mining, including a potential ballot initiative to protect the Smith River. Montana's Smith River flows 59 miles through a towering limestone canyon in central Montana. For that entire stretch, it doesn't have any public access points, and due to the largely undeveloped landscape, an excellent trout fishery, and a multi-day float opportunity, people from all across the world, about 10,000 folks, apply every year in a lottery in the hopes of being able to float down the river in some of Montana's wildest country. In 2015, an Australian mining corporation proposed a mine at the headwaters of Montana's Smith River, adjacent to and directly underneath Sheep Creek, and that's the Smith River's most important tributary. And we've been fighting this mine ever since. It is against this backdrop that a group of Montana citizens and organizations worked to pass a citizen-initiated ballot initiative, I-186. It would have required safeguards to prevent unnecessary impacts from mining by stopping what we call perpetual pollution, acid mine drainage. Acid mine drainage is an unfortunate common occurrence in Montana, both historically and in the current day, and has served as a death sentence for several of our rivers and streams. Sandfire took a high level of interest in I-186 due to its implications for the proposed mine, as the company has repeatedly acknowledged that the mine is being proposed in what we call a massive sulfide zone, which is the precursor to acid mine drainage. Sandfire donated $285,000 of Treasury money to campaign against I-186, even though it acknowledged that it did not have any sources of revenue in the United States and a cash flow of zero. Supporters of I-186 filed an FEC complaint in October of 2018, which was dismissed. Commenting on the dismissal, one of the commissioners expressed her alarm at her colleagues voting to allow such foreign interference in American political life. Following I-186, the Montana legislature tried to react, enacting a ban on foreign national contributions to candidate elections, but that fell short of contributions to ballot campaigns due to intense lobbying from the mining industry. The universe of fundraising available for corporate participation in our ballot initiative process is much, much broader than it needs to be, and the interests that those funds serve is often far-flung from the concerns of everyday Montanans. These folks don't need to drink the water or breathe the air in Montana. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before the committee. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. I'll begin our questions today. I'll ask about 5 minutes of questions, then we'll alternate between the parties. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking our witnesses questions. So let me get this straight, because I think this is really important to the American people. Do all of you agree that there is foreign influence in U.S. elections? You agree, yes?
Yes.
So the record will reflect all four agree that there are. And Mr. Bowman, you recognize that in particular there's certain countries that are uniquely interested in interfering in U.S. elections, in particular Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, Mr. Chairman.
And also China.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and so if we think about this, we should be looking at what are the ways that foreign interference could take place in the United States. One is through breaking current U.S. law. The other is through legal loopholes that exist under current law. So first, on the illegal side, this committee was working to make sure there was only U.S. citizens voting in U.S. elections. Under current law, that's required, but we were putting forward the SAVE Act to make sure that we are ensuring that's the case. As we look to online giving, we have seen significant vulnerabilities in online giving platforms, and in particular, ActBlue. And so, Mr. O'Neill, would you agree that we should be working to close online vulnerabilities on an online giving platform, such as requiring a CVV number, banning the use of prepaid foreign gift cards? Are those logical steps that should be taken?
Yes.
And so then I think what really is surprising to the American people, because when I talk to people about this, they don't recognize that we have massive legal loopholes. And Ms. Sutherland, you laid that out very clearly as to how this can take place. And Mr. Johnson recognized how it is impacting him in the state of Montana. But let's dive into this loophole. So to confirm here, under current U.S. law, a foreign national can transfer money into a 501c organization in the United States. That 501c organization can then transfer 40% of that money into another 501c that can operate as a super PAC or directly engage in U.S. elections. Is that accurate?
Yes,
And you think that that loophole should be closed?
absolutely.
I 100% agree. And then we also look at another loophole that exists, which allows foreign nationals to transfer funds directly into ballot initiatives. And I think this is missed by a lot of people, because what we saw in the last election is very important ballot initiatives in states like Ohio. We saw an important ballot initiative in states like Florida. And we saw foreign funds coming into those elections. Is that accurate?
Yes.
How much went into the state of Ohio for the ballot initiative from foreign sources in your estimates?
So we've been able to trace into Ohio millions coming from foreign-backed cash into Ohio. And Ohio recognized the threat of that, and that's why they stepped up and they actually voted this year to ban foreign funding other state ballot
But
initiatives.
to ban it going forward, but not to ban it historically. This money came into the state of Ohio under your research. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
And did this money come into the state of Florida?
Yes.
And so is there any reason that Congress should not ban foreign money from coming into ballot initiatives in states across the country?
Absolutely no reason to not ban it.
Does anyone have an argument that we should not ban that foreign funds from coming into ballot initiatives? Any of our witnesses? The record reflect all of them agree that we should work to ban this. We have legislation to ban this at the federal level, and we continue to get caught up in the gobbledygook. But when you look at the impact that these foreign funds are having directly in U.S. elections, I think most Americans would be shocked. Because we know on the books a foreign national is not allowed to directly contribute into a U.S. candidate. Is that accurate, Ms. Sutherland?
That's correct.
But all they have to do is simply use the workaround and implement their funds and channel it through a loophole that allows those funds to come in and directly impact U.S. elections, correct?
Correct.
And so as we look at the impact that this has in our elections, how much money have you identified just one foreign individual spending in the past handful of years?
Yeah, so Hans-Jörg Wyss, who's a Swiss billionaire and not a U.S. citizen, has contributed around $250 million into the 1630 fund. And then the 1630 fund turns around and spends it on a whole host of activities.
And I think when the American people realize that this vulnerability exists in our U.S. election system, and as Mr. Bowman pointed out, not only may there be rich billionaires across the globe, but there could be state actors that could engage in this. We could completely envision this same technique being utilized by a Chinese national, a North Korean national, a Russian national, who has a direct interest on U.S. policy. We go back and we look at the array of groups that were interested in killing the Keystone XL pipeline, and we have seen Russian action as it relates to energy production across the globe. Is that accurate, Ms. Sutherland?
Yes.
Now, we could look at a whole host of reasons. I think it is imperative of this committee as we move forward to not only continue to work on the enforcement of our current law, which is including making sure that there's proper security procedures in place in Act Blue, that online giving platforms are blocking foreign funds from coming in. But I think one of the real missed pieces of this is the proven millions of dollars that are coming in from foreign nationals directly impacting U.S. campaigns. We have an opportunity to close it. We have legislation to close it. I think it's imperative that we actually pass this and it becomes law, as the state of Ohio did. I will now yield back. I'll recognize the ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do note again that it was the Republican members of the FEC who created the ballot initiative loophole. They've now recommended we fix it. I agree. I think it was wrong when they made that decision in 2015. I think it remains wrong today. So you'll get our support as we work through this in the months ahead. I do want to, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we all agree, again, foreign interests should have no say over the administration or outcome of American elections. That American elections, the decisions we make about our government, how we organize their society, are the sole province of American citizens. The newfound attention that we're paying to foreign funding of ballot issues is late to the game, as I mentioned. And so what I just want to do is ask you, Mr. Johnson, because this does have a real-life impact, as you can see from photos taken from Montana, and you know this far better than I do. But if I could ask you, you obviously have enormous admiration and respect for not only your state, but the land, which so many people hike, camp, hunt, fish, work. Can you tell us a little bit more about the risks that foreign corporations like Sandfire pose to the health of the people in the land of Montana?
Representative, as I mentioned, both in my written and my oral testimony, Montana is not just a place where Montanans themselves can sort of enjoy the land and the place, but we have 12 million visitors a year from all across the world, and the land is basically an essential piece of our economy as well. Billions of dollars in GDP are generated every year in Montana from visitors. And as I mentioned, we've had a lot of issues with hard rock mining. This perpetual pollution issue is not going away. The federal government has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to try and figure out how to address acid mine drainage without being able to figure out how to accomplish that. It is still an issue in Montana and has caused a lot of pollution. That's why Montanans took it upon ourselves to try and address this issue. And the photo that you see there is the Zortman-Landusky mine. That particular mine is a poster child for bad mining practices, something that we would have hoped to help address and to never permit again in Montana, this acid mine drainage problem, where we've spent approximately $80 million in taxpayer funds and $2 million every year annually in treating that water, which is flowing directly into the Fort Belknap Indian community, impacting their teepee grounds, and fouling what would otherwise be a good source of water quality for drinking water.
And it's I-186 would have had a profound impact on this.
That's correct. For the way that it was written, it would have prevented any new mining permits from being permitted if there was evidence that there would be acid mine drainage or require an associated management of that acid mine drainage, because once acid mine drainage starts, it does not stop. There's mines from the Roman Empire that are still spilling out acid mine drainage at this point. And so you have to basically lock it up, button it up, and treat it forever. So these are ongoing liabilities for thousands of years. And I-186 would have prevented those from occurring again in Montana.
And I think you said in your testimony, just want to make sure I understood that, the company, Sandfire, which was contributing nearly $300,000 to stop the ballot initiative, they didn't have any interest in Montana at the time, but were looking to get permits in the state. Is that to continue this practice?
That's correct. They didn't have any interest in North America, and my understanding is that they still don't.
Gotcha. Thank you for that testimony. Just one quick question. Mr. Bowman, I appreciate your testimony very much. I was surprised, I guess. I expected to see North Korea in the list. Do they not participate in these activities as well, or just wasn't the focus of the report?
Thank you, Ranking Member, for the question. North Korea does engage in some of these activities, but the research of my colleagues at FDD that focus on this really highlight that Russia, China, Iran are the ones that engage in the most and are the most effective.
So it's not an exclusive list. It's just the
Not
ones
at
you
all.
identified.
We just focused on the three foreign adversaries we found most problematic.
Yeah, no, I very much appreciate that. Thank you. Before I yield back, I'd like to ask unanimous consent for the following items to be added to the record. A Business Insider article titled, "The Montana Man Spends His Days Shooting at This Montana Man Spends His Days Shooting at Birds That Land on a Toxic Lake to Save Them from Burning Inside Out." The Montana Supreme Court decision, Western Tradition Partnership, Inc. versus the Attorney General of Montana, which includes an extensive discussion of Montana's history with well-financed corruption in the mining industry. March 18, 2015, vote certification in MRU 6678, in which 3 Republican FEC commissioners created the foreign money ballot initiative loophole. The FEC enforcement complaint in MUR 7523 filed by Yes for Responsible Mining, and Commissioner Ellen Weintraub's statement of reasons lamenting the FEC's dismissal of the complaint in MUR 7523 without objection.
Without objection, so ordered.
I yield
The
back the
gentleman
balance
yields
of my time.
back.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Griffith is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for calling this important hearing. A couple of comments in response to my friend and colleague, the ranking member in his opening. If WinRed is doing something to make it easier for foreign actors to donate by having massive numbers of small donations sent in, more than happy to look into that, as well as Act Blue. Have no problem with that. Further, I would point out that while you mentioned Elon Musk, who is a U.S. citizen, you didn't mention George Soros, who also is a U.S. citizen, but both of those have given money and each side gets one. Sometimes y'all get more than we do, but you know, when it's U.S. money, that's not the focus of this hearing. Ms. Sutherland, I was interested in your comments about the UK Labour Party recruiting and trying to send folks, or sending folks over here to work in the Harris campaign, because it's interesting, in today's online version of the London Times, there is an article about how they're worried we're going to return the favor and send money over to the Reform Party, and so now they're looking at tightening up their laws related to foreign activities in the UK. That's, I don't have personal knowledge, but that's according to my reading of this morning's London Times online edition. And speaking of your work, Ms. Sutherland, I would like to ask unanimous consent for Ms. Sutherland's report, Americans for Public Trust, Foreign Influence in State Ballot Issues, How 1630 Funds Pipeline of Foreign Cash Impacts State Politics, April 2024, be entered into the record.
Without objection.
All right, that being said, Mr. O'Neill, the Virginia Attorney General J.C. Mieres is looking into Act Blue and whether online fundraising entities are following federal law and preventing foreign actors and other prohibited donations from entering U.S. elections process. Mieres is also looking into whether U.S. citizens' identities are being fraudulently used to make donations in their name without their approval to various candidates. And this touches on something else that Mr. Morelli was talking about, is somebody really know that their money is being given in their name. Mieres' team informed my office that while the Attorney General is receiving a number of tips about potential fraudulent donations, the only way they have to identify or to verify people listed as donors are actually the donors whose name appears on the donation, is to send a staffer to the home of the person in question and knock on the door to verify their identity. There's got to be a better system, a better way of verifying that the donations are legitimate. So I ask you, in your experience with asset forfeiture, Are there easier ways to verify identities than spending the man hours to knock on the door of every name you're investigating? And of course, asset forfeiture doesn't have quite as strict rules as when you're trying to set up a potential criminal case, and those have to apply. You have to apply criminal evidence standards. So you got an easier way we can do that?
I wish I could say that there was a straightforward way to verify digital identities currently. What I will say is the system for identifying individuals is really quite broken. Since at least 1999, every single one of ours, if we're old enough, name, DOB, social, address, previous address, mother's maiden name, bank account information, email address, email password has been available online for sale for probably less than 2 cents a piece. And so that makes it very easy for bad actors to steal other people's identities, because when you look at what cyber criminals are doing, which is taking advantage of the elderly, the incarcerated, and children to take over identities, it makes it fertile ground in order to...
Certainly people would want to do that in elections too. I hate to cut you off, but I'm going to try to get another question in before my time runs out. Mr. Bowman, spamouflage is one of China's apparently propaganda operations, and they have taken a special interest in Senator and current Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio. Clemson University's Media Forensics Hub reported that on the morning of his most recent election, X exploded with around 20,000 messages spanning 6,500 different accounts with strange messages about Mr. Rubio. Further, they found anti-Rubio articles posted on places such as Medium and Reddit. All these posts were traced back to China and spamouflage, their network of accounts. This is concerning a clear example of foreign interference in our elections. But how do we maintain free speech while also ensuring that foreign adversaries are not spreading propaganda on our public forums with the intent to either sway elections or, as you previously testified, to divide Americans?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. As my colleagues highlighted in a research memo published this morning at fdd.org, spam...
I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah. No, I know you're busy, but yeah, just flagging it for you and your staff. Spamouflage is a big deal. It involves a vast network of fake accounts on social media. They typically have pushed out low-quality content that, with a few exceptions, garnered little, happy to report, little organic engagement on social media. A notable trend with spamouflage this election style was that it leveraged anti-Semitic tropes to criticize both the American political system and specific candidates. To your broader question, eyeing the clock here, I think it's important to distinguish between foreign adversaries trying to influence our democracy and undermine our democracy in an opaque manner, and what American citizens are doing on constitution. I know you understand that, sir, but I just think it's a very important distinction that we should highlight.
I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield back. I apologize. I find this to be a very interesting hearing. I appreciate the witnesses. I still have about 300 pages to go on the CR, and they're now saying they might vote this afternoon, so I got to go back and read that.
It's a busy day.
I yield back and apologize for leaving.
No, busy day. Appreciate your time here. The gentleman yields back. Ms. Torres is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that all of us in this room agree that more needs to be done to ensure that our elections are free of foreign interference. And I'm just sad that this is our last hearing of the year talking about such an important topic that has impacted, I'm not sure about all the members here, but it certainly has had a personal impact on me, including members of MS-13 being sent to my home while having a swim or hosting a swim party for toddlers as a way to intimidate a member of Congress. We should never tolerate that, no matter what side of the aisle that you sit on. Mr. O'Neill, in your testimony, you said that as technology advances, there must be spaces for sharing security information with our foreign counterparts. I absolutely agree with you. The U.S. is facing an information war. We cannot continue to allow countries, and we mentioned China very loosely, Russia very loosely, Iran. We forget about countries in Latin America, and we must not forget the Latin American is also very involved in our elections. Congress must ensure the safety of our country by securing the global information environment to uphold the integrity of information. That's why I introduced the International Artificial Intelligence Research Partnership Act. This bill would build partnerships between cities in the U.S. and our allies across the world to ensure that the next generation of AI tools enhance security and protect freedom. I am greatly concerned that the incoming administration does not prioritize efforts to protect our core freedoms and may work to weaken the federal agencies combating foreign influence. On page 155 of Project 2025, Republicans want to exterminate the very organizations protecting us from foreign interference, like the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which assists election officials with election security threats. Mr. O'Neill, based on your experience with the United States Service, with the U.S. Secret Service, do you believe that foreign governments are targeting our elections and our democracy through information integrity warfare? And what could be the impact if entities that help us combat malign influence?
So when I was with the U.S. Secret Service, we investigated several cases. One in particular was a Russian individual that was leveraging fake identities to create infrastructure in the United States, specifically servers, in order to launch misinformation campaigns through social media platforms. And we leveraged the wire fraud statutes, bank fraud statutes, identity theft statutes in order to charge him. So he was part of a project LOTFA or something like that in 2018 and 2020. And we saw many other cases that were similar to that. One of the challenges that I fear is that the United States is still, as a country and as small, mid-sized businesses and large businesses, are unprepared to handle cyber attacks.
In 2002, Congress strengthened the ban on foreign interference, specifically to prevent foreign actors from influencing the outcomes of our elections. And I'm troubled by the lack of meaningful enforcement of this provision by federal law by the FEC. This past year, the FEC acted on less than half of the cases involving potentially illegal foreign interference. This inaction appears to be driven by partisanship. Almost every matter the FEC has not pursued is associated with a former president. And this is where we need to be Americans first, not relegate our duties to our parties. I want to include for the record here, Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to submit the statement on behalf of the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Thank you. And lastly, this my question to you is: Do you agree that the FEC should be investigating credible allegations of foreign interference in our elections? Ms. Sutherland?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bowman?
Not my area of focus, but that makes sense, Congresswoman. Thank you.
Of course, this is a common sense that we all agree on. When the agency is tasked with protecting our campaign finance system is broken, creating loopholes and failing to investigate credible allegations, we not just fail ourselves, we fail our electorate. And with that, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Ms. Bice is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, and thank the witnesses for being here this morning. First, let me start out by saying the Ranking Member mentioned issues with large donations coming from individuals that may or may not be able to afford that. And the reality is that oftentimes these folks are setting up a reoccurring donation and don't realize it because they may not be familiar with that, but they also have the option to ask for a refund, and oftentimes they do. And if you look at many of our FEC reports, those individuals are getting their dollars back. I want to first start out by addressing Mr. Johnson's opening statement. You talked about this very serious issue that you have in Montana with mining, but the reality is that's a state issue, and the state legislature, me having been a former state senator, they should be addressing that. I don't think that that's something that necessarily Congress needs to engage itself in if it's a state prerogative. I also want to, recognize that fair and transparent elections are crucial, and that's on in every avenue. And I'm glad to see that my friend from Ohio, Rep. Kerry's legislation was signed into law. The congressional election observers will be protected by federal statute, and I also want to thank the staff who volunteered their time this last election to be part of that process. I want to start with Ms. Sutherland. You talked a little bit in your opening statement about Hans-Jörg Vess. Can you describe a little bit more about the 501c4 organizations that he participates in? And particularly, you caught my attention because you mentioned Oklahoma Voice and their engagement with that. I wonder if there are other ballot initiatives that they may be engaging in the state of Oklahoma, but I'd love to know a little bit more about the organizations.
Absolutely. So Hans-Jörg Vess, as I said, is a reclusive Swiss billionaire. So reclusive, he's probably very bothered that we are having this hearing and exposing his pattern of giving, because it is difficult and complicated to track. Most of his foreign money comes through a group called the Burger Action Fund, which the Associated Press described as a nondescript name for a group with a rather specific purpose, steering the wealth of a foreign billionaire into the world of politics and policy. And yes, we have seen his foreign money, pop up in many things, including giving to State's Newsroom through the Vess Foundation, which operates the Oklahoma Voice in your state. Also, his foreign money has been traced to all these ballot initiatives. Through the 1630 Fund, we've seen over $130 million in 25 states over the last several election cycles.
Can you talk about what specifically some of those ballot initiatives are?
Yes, so just this year, in 2024, we were able to trace $37 million in foreign-backed funds coming into 8 competitive ballot issues, focusing on issues like abortion, minimum wage, and election policy, like what happened in Ohio.
Perfect. Mr. Bowman, if I can pivot to you, what are the most concerning tactics that our foreign adversaries are using to influence U.S. elections?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for the question. Russia's most significant operations in this election cycle involved a series of hoax videos published in the weeks before the election, several of which went viral. Fortunately, I would say the U.S. government promptly responded in many cases, as some of my colleagues noted. In one instance, a fake video depicting someone burning ballots in Pennsylvania was debunked by local election officials on the same day the video was posted, and the federal government released an official statement 2 days later attributing to Russia. Iran's most significant activity involved, as was mentioned, the hack and leak operation targeting the Trump campaign. While Iran successfully compromised sensitive materials from the Trump campaign, mainstream media outlets did not publish this information. Iran also targeted swing states and minority groups through a series of fake websites, but those do not appear to have gained significant traction for the most part. Finally, China, as we mentioned already earlier, focused on its flagship influence operations with spamouflage. And so if I may, the main point here, I think, is that we're all under attack, right? So we should remember that, right? Because if I may, they want us to make this a partisan fight, because then we'll be divided and distracted and weak. And we're all under attack, and so it's like when your family's attacked, right? All that matters is your family's attacked. The family comes together, you work together to solve it. So this is absolutely, in my view, a national security issue, and we make it, it would be a mistake to make it a partisan one.
Perfect segue into a quick last question, and that's to Mr. Neal. What do you think legislatively we could be doing to actually make sure that our elections are more secure moving forward?
I think primarily it's bringing more of the tech, the new fintech and payment systems into the AML regime in order to have more KYC, so we can understand how money flows, and so therefore we can take enforcement action.
Right. Thank you. And with that, I yield.
Congresswoman Bice yields back. Congressman Kerry from Ohio is recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank the ranking member for this important hearing, and also thank all the witnesses for being here. Ms. Sutherland, I want to touch briefly on a couple things because we're going to talk mining. But if you could just talk to me a little bit about, on the same day that Governor DeWine called for a special election in Ohio earlier this year, and the 1630 Fund, literally that day, wired $6 million to the proponents of Issue 1. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so as you said, on the same day that the Governor DeWine called that special session to tackle two things: getting then President Biden on the ballot in Ohio, and two, banning foreign money. 1630 Fund, clearly sensing that this ban on foreign money was going to pass, sent $6 million into an Ohio ballot issue committee, seemingly front-loading the cash before it became illegal in Ohio.
That's right. And is it true that after the Ohio legislature passed a ban on the foreign national contributions to the ballot issues in Ohio, that there was an attorney, I believe Mark Elias, who sued Ohio to block the law so that foreign nationals could still contribute to the ballot issue?
That's absolutely correct. Mark Elias, he's been very busy this election year, denying results in the Pennsylvania Senate race, and well as defending that foreign money should be allowed to come into Ohio. And just weeks after the Ohio legislature passed that ban, he turned around and sued the state of Ohio, arguing that foreign nationals should be able to contribute to ballot issues. Fortunately, the Sixth Circuit recently upheld that decision and said that the law can go into effect.
I want to thank you. All right, Mr. Johnson, we're going to go to you. Does your organization take any foreign money, whether directly or indirectly?
Representative, I do not believe so. I checked in with our business manager, and for the past...
So you don't know whether you take it directly or indirectly? You don't know?
We don't receive any foreign money.
Are you aware of the Surface Mining Control Act that was passed in 1977?
I am.
And tell me the laws as it relates to bonding in the state of Montana.
The laws in Montana require bonding for coal mining, which is different from what I'm here to talk about.
So you're saying
today,
the acid
which is
mine
hard rock
drainage
mining.
from the tunnel in your testimony, the tunnel mine was not from coal mining?
No, that was not, and so we don't typically have, in my experience in Montana, acid mine drainage associated with coal mining as you might in the East Coast.
So
this
let's
is more
let's
of
go
a
on to
hard
this.
rock mining issue.
So I would really like to know whether you can actually, and if you could get back with our teams on this, whether you indirectly or directly take foreign money at all, because I don't know whether you're aware of this, but on December 3rd, China announced that they were going to ban several very important hard rock minerals and critical materials that are necessary for manufacturing in this country. And there's nobody that wants to make sure that we don't explore our natural resources more than the country of China or any other foreign entity. So if you could get back to my team just to make sure that we don't have, any issues with that, because we do have a very good bonding system in this country as it relates to mining. And, my dear friend, Mr. Morelli, showing those pictures, I would like to take you to some of these mines across the country that I've been in many, many cases. And they're bonded, they're clean, they're reclaimed, and that's what we need to be doing. We need to be exploring our natural resources. So I just just wanted to point that out. I'm going to go real quickly, though, because I've got very limited time, Mr. Bowman. We had a tough weekend in sports. Navy beat us, right?
That's right. That's right.
But we are seeing foreign adversaries single-handedly trying to influence our election outcomes. So to what extent are foreign adversaries coordinating with each other to influence these U.S. elections?
Thank you for the question. I'll try to be quick. I think one of the most significant, as someone who focuses, frankly, on foreign defense policy, I think one of the most significant geostrategic developments we're confronting right now is a growing axis of aggressors where we have China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea working together in ways we have not seen before. I don't think we've encountered anything quite like this in modern American history, and I think this has ramifications for our defense budget, our foreign policy, and policies here at home. And what we've been describing about what China and Russia have been doing, they're going to be sharing those tactics, techniques, and procedures with Iran and North Korea, and they're all going to be more effective together in the future. And I think we need to see that collaboration for what it is, and that's going to make these challenges more daunting in the future.
I want to thank you again. I want to thank all the witnesses. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Before we recognize Mr. De-Esposito, I'd like just to recognize Mr. De-Esposito's hard work on this committee. You were spectacular. You brought in a background from a time as a New York police officer and detective, in a particular period of time when we had work to do with U.S. Capitol Police, with crime in D.C., in this hearing on foreign interference and election law. You've been a spectacular member of this committee. And your time here will not be unnoticed as we look at the history of this committee. But just want to thank you for all your hard work on this committee and your time in Congress. And now I will recognize Mr. De-Esposito for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's been an absolute honor to serve on this committee with all of you, and I hope my time on this dais is not over. Before I continue, I'd like to submit for the record a letter from People United for Privacy in support of H.R. 8399, which is the Donor Privacy Protections in Foreign Influence Act, which is a piece of legislation by Chairman Stile.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Bowman, in your opening statement, I think that you said some things that are critically important. And I think that very often we have these hearings and they are talked about on Capitol Hill and in our offices. But this is a hearing that I hope the American people are listening to at home, in their living rooms, around their kitchen table, because it is that critically important. You mentioned in your opening statements the idea that this country is already under attack. You mentioned countries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. I mean, these are our biggest adversaries. These are our greatest threat to our homeland. And there is no question that we are under attack. There is no question that we are already at war. And I think that a lot of the things that we talked about this morning are very important. But I think what I want to focus on is how this affects the people back home. Because very often people say, well, it's not happening in my backyard, it's not happening in my county, my vote is the one that counts. And, you know, we've heard when President Trump has said that we are under attack, when President Trump has said that there is foreign influence in our elections, we've been told very often by the other side of the aisle that that's not really the case. Can you talk to us about specific evidence and tactics? And I know that there was a hoax that was mentioned, but I'm sure you have many more. I want us to deliver to our neighbors back home exactly how their vote is threatened by these adversaries like China, Russia, and Iran.
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. And this will start vague, but I'll try to be more specific. I think we need to fully appreciate that our adversaries understand the battlefield of beliefs and ideas, right? Because China, Russia, and Iran in particular, and also North Korea, they have a problem with us, I'd say, because of our existence and our power. And by existence, I mean our representative democracy presents a threat to autocrats who want to retain their self-serving grip on power. And it conveys to the Russian, Chinese, and Iranian people that there's a more appealing governance model. So just by being ourselves, our small d democratic selves, we threaten their autocratic grip on power. And our power, the fact that we have the most capable military in the history of the world, presents a problem for aggressors like China, Russia, and Iran who want to conquer our partners. So if they can deceive Americans into saying that we have no principles of interest in standing with Taiwan, Ukraine, or Israel, they can sideline our American power, and they want to decide who represents us in Washington. They want to decide what our policies. I say they should butt out and that Americans should decide, and the first step to having them butt out is realizing that they are trying to manipulate what Americans think and determine who represents us in Washington and what our policies be, and that's wrong, and we need to wake up to it.
And based on evidence and the investigations that you have done, is there one party that has been more influenced by foreign adversaries in our elections than the other?
You know, I'm not prepared to answer that. I want to emphasize that both parties have been attacked. And I don't think we're going to come up with durable solutions that will last, that will be effective if it's not a bipartisan approach. So I really think we should not make this a partisan issue.
Mr. O'Neill, thank you for your service. You mentioned in your opening statement the need for collaboration amongst public and the private sector. And obviously, as members of law enforcement, we know that that collaboration works within law enforcement entities as well. Does the FBI work alongside the FEC in investigating foreign entities or adversaries that influence United States elections?
Honestly, I don't know, because that wasn't an area of focus for the Secret Service. We were focused specifically on financial crimes.
Okay. All right. With that, I only have about 30 seconds. Can you just briefly talk about how we see the illicit and illegal money moved through these online platforms?
So money mules are, as Mr. Bowman talked about, is the center of gravity that enables cybercrime and money laundering to flourish. So whether it's a witting or unwitting money mule, they are primarily how the bad actors are moving money throughout, whether it's financial crimes or whether it's any sort of illicit malign activity. It starts with money mules, and also understanding the weaknesses in our current AML regime and focusing on platforms that don't meaningfully do any know your customer activities.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Chairman, once again, it's been an absolute honor. I yield back.
It's an honor to have you here. The gentleman yields back. Ms. Lee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing, and to our witnesses for appearing before us today. As chair of the House Administration Subcommittee on Elections, promoting American confidence in the integrity and security of our elections is a key priority, and identifying the ways in which foreign actors may be influencing and involved in our election system is of paramount importance to the American people. So thank you for being here. I also am so pleased to say that the House unanimously passed the SHIELD Act earlier this week, which I was proud to support, which includes common sense measures to strengthen donor verification standards. And I commend our chairman, Congressman Stile, on his leadership on this critical legislation. I'd like to go back, Ms. Sutherland, to you to begin. The testimony that you have given today about your organization and the report that tracks the 1630 Fund is so important in helping understand the ways in which these loopholes exist and allow foreign governments to influence our elections, including voter turnout. And as you know, in my home state of Florida, this past election cycle, we had two very contentious ballot initiatives that were considered. Did you see any instances of this type of foreign interference occurring in Florida's elections this cycle?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we actually did see it on the issue related to codifying abortion rights in Florida's state constitution. So again, we were able to trace that over $14 million in foreign-backed funds came into Florida to influence your state's constitution. The fact that a foreign national can give directly or indirectly to influence a ballot issue is a loophole that needs to be closed, and I commend everyone's efforts here to close it.
And are there any particular steps that you would recommend that state legislatures or Congress take to close those loopholes?
Yes, implementing a ban like Ohio did, it can also be done on the federal level to reject the issue that foreign nationals can give to ballot issue campaigns. And I'd also like to point out that it was not the FEC that created the loophole. The FEC interprets law. Ballot issues are inherently not elections, so therefore the prohibition on foreign nationals influencing elections does not apply. So it's not that Republican commissioners created this loophole, it's that they interpret the law. And currently, there is no law on the federal level, and in most states, that say foreign nationals can't give to ballot issue campaigns. So it's a simple, common sense measure to implement, and I really look forward to tackling this issue again next Congress.
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill, I'd like to go back to your testimony. Thank you for sharing with us some of the tactics that foreign actors may use to commit financial fraud and cybercrime. And from your experience in federal service, I'm interested in what actions you think that agencies might take to identify and disrupt this type of illicit financial activity, in particular, how we might leverage new technologies, including artificial intelligence, to make forward progress.
So law enforcement can leverage current SARs and CTRs that are submitted from financial institutions. It would be ideal if more payment processors and other fintech companies were also required to submit suspicious activity reports, because those do help law enforcement. But there are millions of SARs that are filed every single year. So leveraging artificial intelligence to mine for those specific suspicious activity reports or heightened surveillance report, whatever is provided, would be of value. Also, the ability to leverage 314A, which enables law enforcement to query financial institutions around the world, is very slow. Sometimes it takes up to 28 days, and it involves manual batch processing. So if there was a way to speed up that process, because as we know, money is moving at a much faster pace than it did when the 314A and 314B were created 20-some years ago. So that's another area where new technology exists that didn't several years ago, and we haven't been able to keep up with the technology.
And Mr. Bowman, you just gave some testimony that related to efforts from China, Russia, Iran to disrupt and exploit vulnerabilities that we may have. I'm particularly concerned about threats from cyber actors in this way. We know China very recently committed a very serious hack of some of our infrastructure and telecommunications providers. And I'm interested in your perspective on whether this is simply an intelligence gathering operation. Do you perceive a risk to our elections infrastructure? And what do you recommend that we be looking at in order to enhance and strengthen our cyber elections infrastructure?
Thank you. Not only do I believe our adversaries are currently waging an information war against us, and we've presented some evidence here today, they're also waging an ongoing, daily, hour-by-hour cyber war against us. And that has many, many facets to it. There's an election component to it. I explained why our elections are our center of gravity. So certainly they're using cyber warfare to attack it as we sit here today. And they're also doing the same thing in the military domain and in the civilian infrastructure that supports the United States military's power projection capability. So we are the most capable cyber country in the world, and we're also one of the most vulnerable. And I think time is well spent trying to shore up our cyber defenses. But just like in this context, until we start to go more on the offensive and start to shift the cost benefit calculation of our adversaries, these attacks will continue until we start to impose some consequences on them. And sooner or later, all defenses, no matter how strong, fail. That's why we need to go more on the offensive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Representative Lee yields back. I'll now recognize the ranking member for closing comments.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Again, thank you to the witnesses for being here, particularly during the holiday season. I wish them all Merry Christmas. To everyone, Happy Hanukkah. Whatever your faith tradition is, I hope everyone enjoys a wonderful holiday season, gets a chance to relax a little bit. I want to join in thanking my colleague, Mr. D'Esposito, for his service here, and certainly wish him only the very best as he moves on, and thank you for your contributions. Also want to, I'm not sure, they say, there's always debate about whether a tree in the forest falls and no one's there to hear it, whether it makes a sound. With Mr. Kilmer not here, well, there he goes. I guess that he'll hear me say what an amazing member Derek Kilmer has been, not only for this committee, but for the Congress. I rarely have found, as I've come across my travels, someone who is so genuine, so committed to to this whole enterprise of American democracy, and particularly loves the Congress as much as Derek Kilmer does, an institution that he has worked very hard to modernize and to make as good as it can be, as good as the American people deserves. And so I'm delighted to thank him for his extraordinary service. And he's going to up me now, as he should, by hopefully getting a chance to say a few words on his own. But I'm grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you have served this institution with dedication and fidelity. And I'm grateful to call you a friend. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well as all the members for their great cooperation, and the staff who does an outstanding job, both sides of the aisle, and who continue to serve this, I think, this institution and the country with distinction. So thanks for everything to the staff, to all the members. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy New Year, everyone. God bless. I yield.
Gentleman yields back. I would echo the chairman's remarks, in particular as it relates to Mr. Kilmer, who just joined us. Spectacular work, is co-chair of the Modernization Committee, which then continued on is the Modernization Subcommittee of the Committee on House Administration. Your leadership, along with Ms. Bice, went a long way. We got some real work done this year, and we appreciate your leadership. You'll be missed, but your work will live on as a legacy here. I'd be happy to recognize Mr. Kilmer for 5 minutes to comment or question the witnesses as you see fit.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll give a rebuttal. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually just want to acknowledge and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the last recommendation of the Modernization Committee was a recognition that the work of improving this institution shouldn't happen every 20 or 30 years, but should happen as a matter of course going forward. And so the creation of the Modernization Subcommittee was in keeping with that. And so my hope is, regardless of which party holds the gavels, that subcommittee continues, because the work of institutional improvement needs to continue. When I was asked to lead that committee, someone gave me a graduation speech that John Gardner had delivered at Cornell University in 1968. He had been a Lyndon Johnson Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare. And he talked about the importance of institutional stewardship. And when he gave the speech, he talked about two perils that face institutions. He said institutions suffer from uncritical lovers who deny an institution the sort of life-giving eye toward improvement that's necessary for organizations to get better. And second, he said institutions suffer from unloving critics, people who treat institutions like the piñata at the party and have an eye towards demolition rather than towards improvement and construction. And we see that in this institution quite a bit. And I think the thing that, and what John Gardner suggested, is if we really care about institutions, then we have to be loving critics of them, that we have to view our institutions through the lens of loving criticism. And that has been the work undertaken by the Modernization Committee, and it's been the work undertaken by the Modernization Subcommittee, and it's been the work of a whole boatload of stakeholders who care about this institution and want to see it get better for the American people. And so my gratitude to Chairwoman Bice and to you, Mr. Chairman, and to Ranking Member Morelli, is that you're loving critics of the institution, and that matters. And my hope and my plea to you is that the work of the subcommittee is allowed to continue with that eye towards loving criticism and institutional improvement. And it's been an honor to get to serve with you. So thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. It's been an honor to serve with you as well. We appreciate your work, and I think there is a need to continue to work to modernize this committee. While sometimes we have good, strong policy disagreements on important topics, I think we've also shown an ability to work together on really key policies. And today's hearing, I think, is a true example of that, that we identified a number of areas in legislation that's essential for the country to make sure, in this case, that we're ensuring U.S. elections are for U.S. citizens and not allowing foreign interference in our elections. Appreciate your work, Mr. Kilmer. Your work, Ranking Member Morelli. The work of this committee will continue, but in the new Congress. And so thank all the members, and in particular, as it relates to this hearing, as we come back, I thank all of our witnesses for sharing their expertise today. There may be additional questions from some members of this committee, and we'd ask you to respond to those questions in writing. Without objection, each member may have 5 legislative days to insert additional material into the record or revise and extend their remarks. If there's no further business, I thank the members for their participation. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.